The shattered remains of the Christmas ornaments glittered on the floor, mirroring the tears welling in my eyes. The forced laughter of my stepson still echoed in my ears, each syllable a fresh wave of humiliation. They thought that by stripping me of my seat, they were stripping me of my worth. They were wrong. My silence in that moment was not defeat, but a gathering storm. If you have a family you love and would fight to protect, subscribe now. The scent of pine needles and cinnamon usually brought a sense of warmth and belonging to our home during the holidays, but this year, it felt like a suffocating reminder of what I had lost. 10 years. 10 years I'd poured my heart and soul into building a life with David, nurturing his son Michael as if he were my own. My name is Luna, and I believed, foolishly, that we were a family. David and I met at a charity gala, a whirlwind romance blooming amidst the clinking of champagne glasses and shared aspirations for a better world. He was charming, witty, and seemed genuinely devoted to his son, who was then a shy, awkward teenager struggling with the loss of his mother. I saw in David a partner, a confidant, and a future filled with love and laughter. Michael, initially wary, slowly began to warm up to me. I helped him with his homework, attended his soccer games, and even navigated the treacherous waters of teenage angst with a patience I didn't know I possessed. Over time, a bond formed, a fragile tapestry woven with shared experiences and unspoken understanding. I invested in their lives, supported their dreams, and truly believed that I had found my place in their world. We built traditions together: annual ski trips, summer barbecues, and of course, Christmas Eve dinner, always held at our home, always filled with the aroma of roasted turkey and the joyous chatter of family. It was my asterisk home, the home I had meticulously decorated and poured my savings into, transforming it into a haven of comfort and love. I had even legally changed the deed, and added both David's and Michael's names to it, so they could be protected after I was gone. I was wrong to be so generous. David's business started struggling a few years ago. He lost a major client and I offered to help him out of my savings. He promised to pay me back once he was back on his feet, but as time went on, he never did. He became more distant, spending late nights at the office and avoiding my attempts to connect with him. Michael, now a young adult, also began to drift away, his visits becoming less frequent, his conversations curt and strained. I attributed it to their respective struggles, offering unwavering support and understanding, clinging to the hope that our bond would withstand the test of time. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle cracks in the facade of our perfect family portrait. The whispered conversations, the furtive glances, the shared smiles that seemed to exclude me from their inner circle. I chose to ignore them, blinded by my own desire to preserve the illusion of happiness. I was so foolish. Christmas Eve had always been a sacred occasion for us, a time to put aside our differences and celebrate the love that bound us together. This year, however, a palpable tension hung in the air, a storm brewing beneath the surface of forced smiles and polite conversation. I had spent the entire day preparing the feast, meticulously arranging the table, and carefully selecting the gifts, all in an attempt to recapture the magic of Christmases past. As we gathered around the table, I took my usual seat, the one at the head, a silent acknowledgement of my role as the matriarch of our family. That's when Michael, his eyes cold and devoid of any warmth, shoved me aside, sending me crashing to the floor. "That seat belongs to my dad," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Get out." The impact stole my breath, both physically and emotionally. The room swam before my eyes, the faces of my family blurring into a grotesque mask of indifference. David, my husband, the man I had devoted 10 years of my life to, did nothing. He simply watched, his expression unreadable as I struggled to regain my composure. My wife didn't even look at me. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint crackling of the fireplace and the triumphant smirk on Michael's face. In that moment, something inside me shattered. The illusion of family, the years of love and devotion, all crumbled into dust. I rose to my feet, my body aching, my heart numb. Without a word, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of my shattered dreams. I knew, with chilling certainty, that this was not just a momentary lapse in judgment, but a calculated act of betrayal. I walked straight to my bedroom, locked the door behind me, and began to cry. I didn't stop until morning. The person I trusted most was one of them. The morning sun, a cruel reminder of a new day, streamed through the bedroom window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the darkness that had settled in my soul. I couldn't bring myself to leave the bed, the weight of betrayal, a physical burden pressing down on me. My body ached, not just from the fall, but from the years of emotional investment that had been so carelessly discarded. The scent of Christmas morning, once a source of joy, now filled me with nausea, a bitter reminder of the charade I had so willingly participated in. I tried to recall the last genuine moment of connection I had shared with David, but my memories were now tainted with suspicion, each interaction scrutinized for signs of deceit. Had he ever truly loved me? Or was I simply a convenient placeholder, a source of financial stability and emotional support until something better came along? I told myself that I was catastrophizing, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, but the cold reality of Michael's words and David's silence echoed in my mind, drowning out any flicker of hope. I forced myself to get up, driven by a desperate need to salvage what was left of my life. I splashed cold water on my face, hopping to wash away the remnants of my tears, and walked downstairs, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. The remnants of Christmas Eve were scattered throughout the house, a grotesque tableau of discarded wrapping paper, half-eaten food, and broken ornaments. David and Michael were nowhere to be seen. A note lay on the kitchen counter, addressed to me in David's familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up, my heart pounding in my chest. It was short, impersonal, and devoid of any emotion. He stated that he needed time to think, that things had become too complicated, and that he was staying at a hotel with Michael for a few days. He ended with a perfunctory, "We'll talk soon." The words felt like a slap in the face, a cowardly attempt to avoid responsibility for his actions. I crumpled the note in my fist, a surge of anger coursing through my veins. This was not the act of a man who loved his wife, but of someone who was desperately trying to escape the consequences of his choices. I tried to call him, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I sent him text messages, pleading with him to explain, to tell me that this was all a mistake, but he didn't respond. Michael's number was blocked. I was completely alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty and despair. Days turned into weeks, each one a torturous reminder of my isolation. David remained unreachable, his silence a deafening indictment of our relationship. I spent my days wandering through the house, a ghost in my own home, surrounded by memories that now felt like cruel taunts. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing my mind. The only human contact I had was with the occasional delivery person or the automated voice on the other end of the phone when I called David's office, desperately seeking any information about his whereabouts. I started to question my own sanity. Had I imagined the love and happiness we had shared? Was I truly as naive and foolish as they seemed to think? The weight of their betrayal was crushing me, slowly suffocating the life out of me. I knew I couldn't continue like this. I needed answers, I needed closure, and I needed to find a way to reclaim my life. I decided to seek legal advice, hoping to understand my rights and protect myself from whatever David and Michael were planning. I made an appointment with a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, who listened patiently as I recounted my story, her expression hardening with each detail. She informed me that, given the circumstances, I had a strong case for divorce and could potentially claim a significant portion of our assets. However, she also warned me that David and Michael could try to contest the divorce, dragging the process out for months, even years, and draining me financially and emotionally. Sarah advised me to gather any evidence I could find to support my claims, including financial records, emails, and any other documentation that might prove David's infidelity or Michael's hostility. As I left Sarah's office, a flicker of determination ignited within me. I refused to be a victim. I would not allow David and Michael to destroy my life. I would fight back, not with anger or resentment, but with intelligence and strategy. I started meticulously gathering evidence, poring over bank statements, credit card bills, and old emails, searching for any clue that might expose their deceit. I discovered a series of suspicious transactions, large sums of money being transferred to offshore accounts, and a string of email exchanges between David and Michael that revealed a long-standing plan to seize control of my assets. The truth was even more insidious than I had imagined. They had been plotting against me for years, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. My blood ran cold as I realized the extent of their treachery. They hadn't just betrayed my love, they had systematically manipulated and exploited me for their own gain. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Every night, I replayed the events of the past few years in my mind, searching for missed signs, for moments when I could have intervened, for opportunities to change the course of events. The darkness amplified my fears, whispering doubts and insecurities in my ear. I started having nightmares, vivid and disturbing dreams in which David and Michael chased me through endless corridors, their faces contorted with malice, their hands reaching out to silence me. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, gasping for air, unable to distinguish between reality and nightmare. The weight of injustice pressed down on me, suffocating my spirit. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, trapped by the walls of my shattered dreams. I knew I had to find a way to break free, to reclaim my life and restore my sense of self-worth. But the task seemed daunting, almost impossible. David and Michael had taken everything from me: my home, my family, my financial security, and my peace of mind. How could I possibly overcome such a devastating loss? I resolved to document everything. I began keeping a detailed journal, recording every conversation, every interaction, every emotion I experienced. I wanted to create a record of the truth, a testament to the injustice I had suffered. I also started secretly recording my phone calls with David, hoping to catch him in a lie or to elicit some admission of guilt. I knew it was a risky move, but I was desperate for any advantage I could gain. As I delved deeper into their web of deceit, I began to uncover a series of shocking secrets, hidden connections, and shady dealings that painted a disturbing portrait of David and Michael's true character. The man I had loved and trusted was not the person I thought he was. He was a liar, a manipulator, and a ruthless opportunist who was willing to sacrifice anything, even his own family, to achieve his goals. And Michael, the son I had nurtured and supported, was nothing more than a pawn in his father's game, a willing accomplice in their conspiracy against me. The revelation of their true nature filled me with a profound sense of disgust and disillusionment. I realized that I had been living a lie for years, blinded by my own desire to believe in the best in people. But now, the scales had fallen from my eyes, and I saw them for who they truly were: cold, calculating, and devoid of any empathy or remorse. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted, a burning rage that consumed every fiber of my being. I wanted to make them pay for what they had done, to expose their lies and bring them to justice. But I knew that revenge would not bring me peace. It would only perpetuate the cycle of violence and hatred that had already consumed my life. I needed to find a different path, a way to heal and to reclaim my power without resorting to the same tactics they had used against me. The plan had begun. The weight of it all threatened to crush me. The legal battles loomed. Sarah warned me about the potential for David to bleed me dry, financially and emotionally. The thought of facing him in court, of reliving the betrayal in excruciating detail, filled me with dread. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a prison, each room echoing with the ghosts of happier times. I found myself staring blankly at the walls, unable to focus on anything, lost in a fog of despair. I stopped taking care of myself, neglecting my appearance, skipping meals, and isolating myself from the outside world. My friends tried to reach out, offering support and encouragement, but I pushed them away, unable to bear the thought of sharing my pain with anyone. I felt like a leper, tainted by their betrayal, unworthy of their love and friendship. The future stretched before me, a bleak and desolate landscape, devoid of hope or possibility. I began to question my own worth, wondering if I was somehow to blame for what had happened. Was I too trusting, too naive, too willing to overlook the warning signs? Had I somehow driven David into the arms of another woman? The self-doubt gnawed at me, slowly eroding my self-esteem and poisoning my mind. One evening, as I sat alone in the darkened living room, a glass of wine trembling in my hand, I found myself contemplating the unthinkable. The darkness whispered seductive promises of escape, of oblivion, of an end to the pain. The medicine cabinet beckoned, offering a quick and easy solution to my problems. I stared at the bottle of pills, my hand hovering over the cap, the temptation almost overwhelming. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face, and imagined the sweet release of surrendering to the darkness, of finally finding peace. But then, a flicker of defiance sparked within me, a stubborn refusal to let them win. I thought of my parents, of the sacrifices they had made for me, of the dreams they had for my future. I thought of my friends, of the love and support they had offered me, of the joy they brought into my life. And I thought of myself, of the strong, independent woman I had once been, of the potential that still lay dormant within me. I couldn't let David and Michael take that away from me. I wouldn't let them destroy my life. I slammed the bottle of pills back into the medicine cabinet, a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. The tears continued to flow, but they were no longer tears of despair, but tears of anger and resolve. I would not give up. I would not surrender. I would fight back, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been betrayed, manipulated, or taken advantage of. That night, as I lay in bed, unable to sleep, I started to formulate a plan. I knew that I couldn't defeat David and Michael by playing by their rules. They were ruthless and cunning, and they would stop at nothing to protect their interests. I needed to find a way to outsmart them, to expose their lies and bring them to justice without resorting to violence or illegal activities. I decided to focus on their weaknesses, on the flaws in their carefully constructed facade. I knew that David was obsessed with his reputation, with maintaining the image of a successful and respected businessman, and I knew that Michael was driven by greed, by an insatiable desire for wealth and power. Those would be their downfall. I started by gathering as much information as I could about their business dealings, their personal lives, and their relationships with others. I spent hours poring over financial records, emails, and social media accounts, searching for any inconsistencies or irregularities that might expose their deceit. I discovered a network of offshore accounts, shell corporations, and hidden assets that revealed the true extent of their financial malfeasance. I also uncovered a series of scandalous affairs, secret alliances, and backstabbing betrayals that painted a disturbing portrait of their true character. The more I learned, the more determined I became to bring them down. I realized that I had underestimated them, but I had also underestimated myself. I was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than I had ever imagined. I was no longer a victim, but a warrior, ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The anger that had consumed me began to transform into a cold, calculating resolve. I would not let them see my fear, my pain, or my vulnerability. I would appear to be broken, defeated, and resigned to my fate. But beneath the surface, I would be plotting my revenge, carefully laying the groundwork for their ultimate downfall. The game had changed, and I was about to rewrite the rules. The first step was to disappear. I needed time and space to plan my next move, away from the prying eyes of David and Michael, away from the constant reminders of my shattered dreams. I packed a small bag, withdrew a modest sum of money from my bank account, and left the house in the dead of night, leaving behind everything that had once defined my life. I drove to a small, secluded town several hours away, a place where no one knew me, a place where I could start over. I rented a small apartment under an assumed name, severed all ties with my past, and began to reinvent myself. I spent my days researching, planning, and strategizing, meticulously gathering evidence and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I knew that it would be a long and arduous process, but I was willing to do whatever it took to achieve my goal. I changed my appearance, dyeing my hair, altering my wardrobe, and adopting a new persona. I became someone else, someone stronger, someone more dangerous. I learned to protect myself, taking self-defense classes, studying surveillance techniques, and mastering the art of deception. I transformed from a naive and trusting wife into a cunning and resourceful operative, capable of outsmarting even the most ruthless adversaries. The woman they had betrayed was gone. In her place stood a force to be reckoned with, a woman driven by a burning desire for justice, a woman who would stop at nothing to reclaim her life and expose their lies. They thought they had broken me. They thought they had won, but they were wrong. The game was just beginning. They would soon learn that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I was about to unleash my fury upon them with devastating force. Their biggest weakness. They thought they were untouchable. I became a ghost in their world, a phantom observer meticulously charting their every move. My days were consumed by reconnaissance. I learned their routines, their habits, their weaknesses. David, the master manipulator, always had a tell, a slight twitch of his left eye when he was lying. Michael, the greedy son, couldn't resist flashing his ill-gotten gains, a brand new sports car here, an extravagant vacation there. They were careless, arrogant in their belief that they had gotten away with everything. They underestimated me. I started small, setting up hidden cameras in their favorite restaurants, the golf club they frequented, even inside Michael's flashy car. The recordings were a goldmine, capturing incriminating conversations, shady deals, and blatant admissions of guilt. I also hired a private investigator, a former law enforcement officer named Ben, to dig deeper into their financial affairs. Ben was a master of his craft, uncovering a labyrinth of offshore accounts, shell corporations, and fraudulent transactions that stretched across continents. The evidence was mounting, a damning indictment of their greed and deceit. One close call sent my heart racing. David, growing suspicious of my sudden disappearance, hired his own investigator to track me down. I spotted him one afternoon, lurking outside my apartment, his face obscured by a newspaper. My cover was almost blown. I immediately contacted Ben, who managed to identify the investigator and discreetly persuade him to back off. It was a chilling reminder of the risks I was taking, but it only strengthened my resolve. I knew I was getting close. My plan was intricate, a carefully orchestrated symphony of legal maneuvering, public exposure, and financial ruin. First, I would use the evidence I had gathered to file a lawsuit against David and Michael, accusing them of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The lawsuit would be a public spectacle, exposing their dirty laundry for the world to see. Second, I would leak the incriminating recordings and financial documents to the media, triggering a firestorm of public outrage and prompting a full-scale investigation by law enforcement. Third, I would work with Sarah, my lawyer, to freeze their assets, seize their properties, and recover the money they had stolen from me. The goal was not just to punish them for their betrayal, but to dismantle their empire, to strip them of their wealth, their power, and their reputations. I wanted them to experience the same pain, the same humiliation, the same despair that they had inflicted upon me. I knew that David and Michael would fight back with everything they had. They would use their wealth and their connections to try to discredit me, to silence me, to make me disappear. But I was prepared for them. I had anticipated their every move, and I had a countermeasure for every threat. I had also built a network of allies, people who believed in my cause, people who were willing to help me expose their corruption. There was Ben, the private investigator, Sarah, my lawyer, and a handful of journalists who were eager to break the story. We were a team, united by a common goal, to bring David and Michael to justice. The final piece of the puzzle was the timing. I needed to choose the perfect moment to strike, a moment when they were at their most vulnerable, when their defenses were down. I decided to wait until David was about to receive a prestigious award for his business achievements, an award that would cement his reputation as a pillar of the community. It would be the perfect opportunity to expose his lies and shatter his carefully constructed image. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the excitement building with each passing day. I was like a coiled spring, ready to unleash my fury upon them with devastating force. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they had won. But they were about to learn that karma has a way of catching up with those who deserve it. The exact day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth. The award ceremony loomed, a black-tie affair at the city's grandest ballroom. I secured a ticket under a false name, wanting to witness their downfall firsthand. The night arrived, a swirling vortex of champagne, flashing lights, and backslapping congratulations. David, beaming with pride, stood at the podium, launching into a self-congratulatory speech about his business acumen and philanthropic endeavors. It was nauseating. He spoke of integrity, of honesty, of giving back to the community. Every word was a lie, a carefully crafted facade designed to deceive and manipulate. My hand tightened around the flash drive hidden in my clutch, the flash drive containing all the evidence I had gathered, the key to their destruction. I had painstakingly compiled a digital dossier, a comprehensive account of their crimes. The offshore accounts, the fraudulent transactions, the incriminating recordings, all meticulously organized and time-stamped. I had also prepared a detailed press release, outlining the allegations and providing links to the evidence. The plan was simple. As soon as David finished his speech, I would release the information to the media, triggering a chain reaction that would expose their deceit and bring their empire crashing down. I watched, a predator waiting for the opportune moment to strike. He droned on, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. Michael stood beside him, grinning like a fool, basking in his father's glory. He had no idea what was coming. Then a wrench was thrown into the works. Just as David was reaching the crescendo of his speech, a young woman stepped out of the crowd. I didn't recognize her at first, but then it hit me like a punch to the gut. It was David's mistress, the woman he had left me for, but something was different. She looked distraught, her eyes red and swollen, her body trembling. She walked slowly towards the stage, her gaze fixed on David. The room fell silent, a hush of anticipation spreading through the crowd. David's smile faltered, a flicker of fear crossing his face. He knew something was wrong. She stopped a few feet from the stage, took a deep breath, and spoke, her voice barely a whisper yet amplified by the silence of the room. "David," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I can't do this anymore. I can't live with the lies." She then launched into a tirade, accusing David of manipulating her, of using her, of promising her the world, and then abandoning her when she became inconvenient. She revealed details of their affair, exposing his hypocrisy and his cruelty. The crowd gasped, whispers rippling through the room like wildfire. David's face turned ashen, his carefully constructed mask crumbling before my eyes. Michael stood frozen, his grin replaced by a look of horror. This wasn't part of the plan. This was chaos. But the mistress wasn't done. She turned to Michael, her eyes filled with rage. "And you, Michael," she spat, "you're just as guilty as your father. You knew about the affair, you helped him cover it up, and you profited from his lies." She then revealed a secret that I had not uncovered, a secret that would have devastating consequences for Michael. She claimed that Michael had been using his father's company to launder money for a criminal organization, that he was involved in illegal activities that could land him in prison for years. The room erupted. People were shouting, pointing, and whispering. Security guards rushed towards the stage, trying to restore order. David and Michael were surrounded, their faces contorted with anger and fear. My plan was falling apart. The mistress's outburst had stolen my thunder, hijacking my carefully orchestrated reveal. But then I realized something. This was even better. Her accusations were far more damaging than anything I could have done. She had exposed their moral bankruptcy, their corruption, and their criminal activities in a way that no amount of evidence could have achieved. The crowd was turning against them, their reputations were in tatters, and their empire was crumbling before my eyes. But there was still one card left to play. As the security guards dragged the mistress away, I saw an opportunity. I approached the stage, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached into my clutch, pulled out the flash drive, and handed it to a nearby journalist, a reporter I knew I could trust. "Here," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "This is everything. All the evidence you need to expose them for who they really are." The journalist looked at me, his eyes wide with surprise. He recognized me immediately. "I know who you are," he whispered. "I've been waiting for this." He took the flash drive, nodded his head, and disappeared into the crowd. I watched as he made his way to the press area, his fingers flying across his keyboard, preparing to unleash the information to the world. David and Michael, still surrounded by security guards, were trying to regain control of the situation. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The truth was out. As I turned to leave, I caught David's eye. He looked at me, his face a mask of hatred and despair. He knew that I was responsible for this. He knew that I had orchestrated their downfall, but he couldn't do anything about it. He was powerless. A slow smile spread across my face. It was over, I had won. But as I walked away, a chilling realization washed over me. The mistress's accusations against Michael were far more serious than I had anticipated. If what she said was true, he was in grave danger. And David, desperate to protect his son, would do anything to silence her, to bury the truth, to make the problem disappear. I knew too much. I was a threat. And David was not going to let me live to tell the tale. As I stepped out of the ballroom and into the night, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I was no longer just a scorned woman seeking revenge. I was a target, and they were coming for me. I had to disappear. Again. The exact day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth. I vanished into the night, melting back into the shadows I had learned to navigate so well. I knew they were coming, that David's desperation would fuel a ruthless pursuit. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, every car's headlights felt like targeting beams. I changed cars, ditched my phone, and found refuge in a forgotten corner of the city, a place far removed from champagne and awards ceremonies. I watched the news, the unfolding chaos a grim satisfaction. The journalist had delivered, publishing the dossier online. The world saw what I had seen: the web of deceit, the stolen fortunes, the cold calculation behind David and Michael's empire. The mistress's accusations of money laundering and criminal connections added gasoline to the fire. News outlets were in a frenzy, the police had launched an investigation, and David and Michael's carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. I saw David's face on television, a grotesque mask of fury and humiliation. The years of carefully cultivated respectability were gone, replaced by the stark reality of his crimes. Michael, looking pale and shaken, stood beside him, the weight of his impending legal troubles crushing his swagger. They were being torn apart, publicly and irrevocably. Their biggest weakness: they thought they were untouchable. The fallout was swift and brutal. David's business empire crumbled, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. He was stripped of his awards, his accolades, his standing in the community. Michael faced even graver consequences, the money laundering charges carrying the threat of a long prison sentence. Their lawyers, once eager to represent them, now distanced themselves, sensing the impending doom. The mistress, initially hailed as a whistleblower, soon disappeared, likely silenced by David's long reach. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was fleeting. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. The world was a dangerous place, and sometimes the only way to survive was to fight back. I continued to watch from the shadows, ensuring my safety while savoring the justice being served. The police investigation uncovered a trail of corruption and illicit activities that implicated not only David and Michael, but also a network of their associates. The arrests began, one by one, each one a nail in their coffin. They scrambled to defend themselves, issuing denials and accusations, but their words fell on deaf ears. The evidence was overwhelming, the public outrage uncontainable. The lawsuit I had initiated, armed with the evidence I'd meticulously gathered, became a feeding frenzy for the media. Sarah, my lawyer, was a force of nature, dismantling their defenses with ruthless efficiency. The offshore accounts were exposed, the shell corporations dissolved, and the stolen money slowly but surely returned to me. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life, about sending a message that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. David, desperate and cornered, tried to reach out to me, sending messages through intermediaries, begging for forgiveness. But I refused to respond. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices, and he had to live with the consequences. The final blow came when David and Michael were formally charged with multiple felonies, including fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. They were denied bail and remanded into custody, their faces etched with despair as they were led away in handcuffs. The image was seared into my memory, a testament to the power of revenge, the price of betrayal. They lost everything: their wealth, their power, their freedom. They were stripped bare, exposed for the liars and criminals they truly were. I just smiled. It was over. The game was won. I could finally move on, rebuild my life, and find peace. I closed the chapter on that dark period, leaving behind the pain, the anger, and the desire for revenge. I started a new business, a foundation dedicated to helping women who had been victims of fraud and abuse. I used my experience to empower others, to give them hope, to show them that they too could overcome adversity. As for David and Michael, they faded into obscurity, their names synonymous with shame and disgrace. They had tried to break me, to destroy me, but they had only made me stronger. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. It's a bitter pill that must be swallowed when justice is denied. It's about reclaiming what was stolen, about standing up for what is right, about sending a message that betrayal will not be tolerated. It's about survival. It's about healing. I finally understood that the greatest revenge was not just their downfall, but my own rise. The woman they tried to bury had become a phoenix, soaring above the ashes of their destruction. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.